All right, it is, what time is it? 6:35. Call this meeting to order of the Champaign County Board Jail Facilities Committee. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Harper. McGuire. Pasalacqua.
Here.
Storr. Summers.
Here.
Taylor. Patterson.
Here. All right, could I have a motion for the approval of the agenda and addendum?
So moved, Summers.
Second, Pasalacqua.
All right, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? All right, motion passes. Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes? Minutes of October 6th. Is that moved by Mr. Pasalacqua? Second? Second by Mr. Storr. And just for, it looks like Tammy was actually left out of the minutes, but I've been informed by our clerk that she has been added to the official copy. All right, seeing no discussion, just do that voice vote, right? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, it passes. Public participation, we have Ron Kester.
Hi there. My name is Ron Kester. I live at 1209 West Oregon Street in Urbana. My sense is that the purpose of the meeting tonight is to put together some proposals that you're going to bring to the larger county board to talk about in terms of what it means to close the downtown jail, what it means to move forward in terms of our facilities needs regarding detainment. At the October meeting, I came forward to make 2 points, and the first point was that incarceration is a product of policy. There's nothing natural about incarceration rates. If you look at the incarceration rates in the state of Illinois, they've almost dropped in half in the last 20 years. If you look at the incarceration rates in Champaign County, they're less than, they're down a third, more than a third compared to what they were 20 years ago. So there's a sense in which when those policies change, you can see the incarceration rates and facilities needs change as well. So the second point that I made was that minimum security facilities versus the maximum security facilities that are on the table right now provide all kinds of advantages. And I haven't heard any discussion about the possibility of taking the detainment function and turning it into something that's minimum security instead of maximum security. It seems to me that a reasonable proposal going before the county board will feature those 2 options. The first is that you are going to do a study to see what the actual incarceration needs of the county are. And in particular, it's to look at the criminal justice reform that's taken place over the last few years and will continue to take place over the next few years. Just as a reminder, those people who promoted the Pretrial Fairness Act, statistically speaking, based on other municipalities that have had this reform take place, see their incarceration rates cut by 50 to 70%. So the notion that we understand what our incarceration rates are now compared to what's going to happen when money bail disappears from the state of Illinois in 2023 means we just do not have that information in front of us. So I would encourage you to say one of the choices is that we study what the real incarceration needs of Champaign County will be. Now, I've heard a lot of people say we don't want to kick this issue down the road, to kick the can down the road. And I appreciate that metaphor, but I think that metaphor has a different purpose in the context of this discussion. It's not kicking the can down the road to say you want to make a really good decision. It's kicking the can down the road to say you're going to reproduce the criminal justice system we have now and wait for, 40 or 50 years before you'll have another opportunity to do something about it from the standpoint of facilities. Because you will already have that in place that will not be repurposed for anything else other than what it's purposed for as a jail. That's what it means to have maximum security facilities. So I think that making this choice well and taking care is something the county board has already done over the last 10 years since this issue first came up on people's radar. But we are at a time of change within the state and within local municipal uses of jailing function. And I think your choices need to reflect that. As far as minimum security facilities are concerned, I just proposed the idea of saying, well, what if it's something that's much more like a Motel 6? And I wasn't trying to be facetious, but I was trying to make it so that you were all familiar with the idea of what minimum security can look like, right? Minimum security can be that you go into something that looks a lot more like a studio apartment, and you have to stay there and be detained by the state until the business of the state is done. Now, I think we have an image in our mind that everybody who ends up in the jail should be punished, that even if they're just being detained, there's something about the circumstance and being in jail that means you should start being punished now. That's absolutely false. I've worked in the jail as a volunteer tutor, and I've worked with the Education Justice Project at the prison at Danville for years. And I've come across one case after another of people whose mental health was deteriorating based on shoplifting, or somebody whose mental health was deteriorating based on a DUI that they were going to have to go back to the community and get a job and do things again. There's all kinds of reasons why preserving somebody's humanity with minimum security facilities is a smart choice. It also creates greater flexibility from the standpoint of the justices who are administering punishment. It creates greater flexibility for the correctional officers who can incentivize minimum security over maximum security. And it also creates greater flexibility for the community. So that if we find we don't need the jail in the same way 20 years from now as we do now, we can use the minimum security facility for things like mental health issue, for things like substance abuse treatment, for things like crises related to somebody who just needs time to be alone because they're suicidal. There's all kinds of circumstances in which those kinds of facilities could be repurposed for other crisis needs. And so what would that require? Well, it requires having a study session to say, what does it look like to incorporate minimum security facilities into our plan? And so I think that should be another choice that goes before the county board. We need to study what minimum security would look like, who we would need to work with in order to implement a plan like that. Thank you very much.
All right. Seeing no more public comment, the next part of the agenda is communications. Do any committee members have communications for the committee? All right. The next item is new business. This is more for kind of information only. We had Tammy produce a couple other bonding scenarios to kind of give us, I'm sorry. I do a lot of mumbling too, I'm sorry. We had Tammy produce a couple other bond scenarios just to kind of give us more options to look at. Didn't know if anybody had any comments about that.
I'd like to just, I guess, ask some questions and make some comments about the bonding. Is there any crime in bonding and being creative with finances for some of the other programs that we have on the table and being serious about this project with by committing more ARPA funds to this? You know, if we want to bond, borrow, referendum, then let's do that for some programs, and let's do that for maybe a different piece of infrastructure. But for this, which even if you don't call this the jail project, if you call this the satellite building project, it's still in dire need. So as opposed to borrowing $13 million for this piece of infrastructure, why don't we consider referendum or bonding for some of the other projects, and let's get down to brass tacks and get this done with the money that we are granted through ARPA? I mean, has anyone considered that option?
A dollar's a dollar. I mean, what's the...
I mean, because we have, all of us in this room have at least verbally committed that this project has to happen. And with the new information that we have via your email and with this bonding plan, it's starting to sound more like talk and less like action. And so I just think that, and to the speaker's point, the plan even does have a little bit more softer parts of the facility. minimum, and it's also got some maximum, and it's got some office. So it's deserving of more than 3.75 or $4 million of the grant money. And if bonding and borrowing is an option for this project, why couldn't that be an option for some of the other projects instead of this one?
I guess I go back to my original point that I don't, if it's money acquired through a bond or money acquired through ARPA, what's the difference in value in your mind? Because I guess I'm just trying to understand what your thinking is.
Well, there's a cost to the bond money. There's less cost to the ARPA money, and there's availability of it immediately. I, this is a dire need project that we've agreed we need to move forward on quickly. I'd rather see a more effective use, or at least more commitment of the ARPA funds to this project than I think we've whittled it down to 3.75 million. Is that correct?
Whittled what down?
The ARPA commitment is looking like 3.75 million. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
So what is
So
that
as far
number?
as, are you referring to the,
Well, we haven't got a final figure in the ARPA budget, but from what I'm reading from last meeting minutes, are we only really committing 3.75 million from rescue plan funds
for this project?
for this project?
I mean, we haven't specified that. We committed a certain amount to a sort of general county facilities infrastructure needs, but none of it was specifically earmarked for this project per se. So it's still up to us to set that.
I guess that's my input. Is I'd rather see more ARPA funds front loaded, and then the CARFA fund and the alternative revenue bonds on the backside.
Steve?
Yeah, just a question and then a comment. Brad, when you said a couple times you talked about referendum. Where is referendum playing into this picture as you're seeing it? Because I'm a little confused.
That was in earlier conversation. That's not on this memo, but
Okay.
But we had talked about options of financing. That was one of those early. It's not on this agenda, but I know that we are trying to administer the Rescue Plan Act money fairly and based on need and request, and it just seems that the more we talk about this, the more some of that money flows to other places and the less it flows to this.
Yeah, I guess it kind of takes me back to the point of if the money is acquired from a bond or if the money is acquired through ARPA, that doesn't really change the value. And sure, if we bond out, you have to pay interest on that. But your suggestion is instead of bonding out for this, we bond out for something else. So I guess I'm missing the savings.
Absolutely.
There's also mention of like having the money up front. I'm not an
Absolutely.
expert on the logistics of bonds, but my understanding is when you bond out, you acquire that money and then you pay it off over the years.
Yeah, I'd rather not have to bond at all. What I'm saying is, to me, we have a vital project here, and maybe when we look at some of the other places that maybe we would move some funds to the jail project, maybe we would scrutinize those projects a little bit tighter and say, maybe we don't need 13 million. Maybe we can adjust those projects. Because I don't feel like this one can be adjusted. I think that I don't think we're shooting for the stars anymore under this agenda. I think under this agenda and through testimony that we're shooting for the bare minimum. And where I like the green aspect of geothermal, I haven't seen the numbers on it. I also don't like the price tag of it. So if we're going to start adding extras and start talking about bonding, well, let's do that for something else. Let's get the money set aside for this and try not to bond for this.
Mr. Summers?
The comment portion, when I had the floor the last time, was I've heard you say that you've thrown out a number of a little over $3 million in ARPA funds being used. We haven't come to that conclusion yet. We haven't decided where we're going to go with that yet. But I wholeheartedly agree with you on the point that this is a critical project that we need to move forward with as quickly as possible. Finally, in terms of using geothermal, I think Chair Patterson has made some additional inquiries with the architect. It appears we're looking at about $500,000. And I think even my colleague Stan Harper would agree with me that if we can put geothermal in and save that $500,000 over the next 10 or 15 years and then continue to save after that, that would be money well spent for the county.
I don't disagree. My personal experience with geothermal has not been maintenance-free, and I don't know what the payback period is on that. If in fact it has a useful life and a payback period, I understand that, but I also understand we're on a beer budget right now. And I don't want to make that cause us to make a bad decision, especially not long-term, but do we know that the 500,000 would be saved? I mean, is there any kind of guarantee or any kind of historical data that says that that's money well spent?
Well, we can make further inquiries with the architects, but I wouldn't imagine this would slow down construction of the project. I would say that when we were in discussion of a jail expansion that was a little bit larger than this a few years ago, geothermal was absolutely on the table, and I think most of the folks that were having those discussions agree that that was certainly something that we should at least strongly consider. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. In respect to Mr. Pascalakwa's proposition, I think, whether we borrow the money for the jail project, which is, or for modification of the satellite jail, this is a county function. This is one of our responsibilities. This is something that we were planning to do before the ARPA funds were committed to the county, and it's proper for the county to pay for this. And just as it's proper for us to maintain the roads, maintain the buildings, and provide for our employees. Now, with regards to the geothermal, it's generally thought that geothermal is going to reduce the need for heating and cooling by other means, electricity, gas, whatever. And so and yes, it's a big upfront cost, just like solar panels are, but you recoup the cost over the lifetime of the facility.
I have no problem with geothermal, but that's the numbers I'd like to see, because in my experience being on the building the ordinance for wind and solar, those machines do not pencil without subsidy. I don't care how you slice it, they don't pay for themselves. So I am all for it if it's recoup. If it's just green without dollars and cents, then this is no time for us to prove a point.
Well,
But if we can realize the savings, especially over long term, and we have a good lifespan cost of the product, then I can support that. But, as they say, times are tough. Every penny counts. I'd like to see the data to make sure that's a good decision.
well, certainly there's a lot of ways of calculating that money saved, not just through how much you pay to Ameren or how much, or Illinois Power, but also to our own health. And so I'm not sure what figures Mr. Brenner will be able to slide for you, but these kind of have to be examined in context. If the chair would allow, I'd like to bring up yet another item, and that is
Chris,
that,
I'm going to stop you real quick. We are on the discussion only, discussion of the two bond scenarios. Does anybody else have any
oh,
comments
in
that
that
are
case, I'll
specifically
wait. I'll
about the
defer.
bond scenarios on the agenda? So moving on, now it's the recommendation to the county board for jail facility project and funding. Mr. Storr, sound like you had something to discuss on that topic.
Thank you, Chair Patterson. In reviewing the proposal for that we're currently considering for the modification of the satellite jail, I called attention to a couple of the board members that from the documents that I've looked at, it looks like that there is no money or plan to rehab the existing healthcare area of the satellite jail to programming and education as was proposed. And my recollection is from previous meetings, especially the September meeting, that when I asked the architect about this, he said that was not, that funds in this bare bones budget that he presented did not include monies for rehabbing that area for education and programming. I think this is a mistake. If we don't do this, the opportunities for the folks that are being incarcerated to benefit from mental health, GED, and religious programs help them considerably, not just while they're in the jail, but almost all of these folks will be released at some point in the future. And this is an opportunity to help them, give them the help while they are being held or while they are residing in this facility. Again, rightly or wrongly, so I would like to see this, I'd like to see that the architect be directed to determine what the cost for rehabilitating that area would be so that it could be used for education and programming. Mr. Patterson.
All right,
If I could speak to that, I would wholeheartedly agree, and I think where I saw the rehabilitation of those facilities was in the master plan, the whole master plan, not this abbreviated version. And I would agree with you that we most definitely need attention to those areas as well. It's sad to think that it's going to be an additional line item and not included, but I think these are going to be just one of the many shortcomings we have by shooting for the halfway mark, which, as I say, I don't support the halfway shot. But I sincerely agree with you that we need the health care, the mental health, the space for separation. This COVID taught us lots of stuff, showed us lots of shortcomings. So yes, I think we're on the same page.
This is a topic that kind of caused some confusion for me. Me and Chris were discussing it because the way it's labeled on the drawing of the plan, it says existing healthcare space, future program. Now, I interpreted that to mean that there would be construction to make it into programming space, or else, why necessarily mention it. But yeah, I think we need to get clarity on, to confirm that that's not something that's incorporated into the plan and how much it would be, because I think that that's definitely something that I wholeheartedly support.
I hope that we can,
Chair?
I hope that was a caucus that we can all vote.
We have the luxury of having the sheriff here. Could he speak to that?
Good evening, everyone. So I don't have my plan in front of me, but if I recall, it was part of the original plan to revamp that as well as renovate the existing satellite jail to make it compliant with ADA and also jail standards. If I recall, Mr. Reefsteck last time mentioned that this proposal that you have in front of you now will build a new healthcare facility, a bigger healthcare facility. And then that would open up, it does not include resources to redo the current healthcare facility, but in my opinion, I don't believe it would take much to do that. That space is not going to be used for anything else. It can be allocated for whatever we need it to be, because the people who are in there are going to be in a new healthcare area at this point. So I don't think it would, I would hate to put a cost on it, but I honestly don't know that it would take a lot of money to get that ready for mental health or classroom or something like that. It'd be a little smaller than the other classroom, but I think it could definitely be doable.
Dustin, can you speak to what's currently in, like, once they move units, like what's physically in there that would need to be renovated?
So there's a couple of rooms in there. I think the biggest thing, Mike, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest thing is probably the counter. So there's, I mean, what's it take to do a counter? You know, maybe once that counter's out, redoing the floors, something like that. But the biggest thing in there that would need to be moved would be the nursing counter.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, to make it into programming space, you just kind of need to clear it out.
Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your input on that. Anybody else? So, Chris, did you want to make a recommendation with that?
Specific to what I was talking about?
Could just do the whole thing.
Huh?
Can you just make a recommendation that we can discuss putting
Thank-
forward to the county
thank-
board?
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that, that the architect be directed to include the rehabilitation of the existing healthcare area for education and programming in the new design.
Could you make a full recommendation for the county board, like the full project?
I think I could. I'm going to need to talk to you about how that should be written. Very good. Okay, I thought I did. All right. Specific to which I'd brought up, and I think that's what you were kind of getting to, or maybe not. Just slap me upside the head. Okay. Like to recommend that the August 19th, 2021 Reestack Reed and Company, Champaign County Public Safety Facilities Master Plan update, including the addition of the geothermal option for new additions, be referred to the county board as a recommendation for acceptance, approval, and funding, and that the funding should use CAR funds to cover the jail design up to $2,289,547. Oops. Okay. And ARPA funds not currently allocated FY 2022 budget up to $5 million, and alternative revenue bonds repaid over 20 years up to $13 million. Is that
All right, and just to clarify, that also would include the renovations for the programming space.
And that the plan should include renovation of the healthcare area, existing healthcare area for inmate programming and education and staff education.
I will second that motion.
May I ask a question about that? So are you specifically stating up to $5 million of ARPA funds only for the jail project or for the facilities projects in general? For example, the needed work to the county clerk's office and all that, or is this specific to only this project at this committee?
Yeah, that's what this proposal is for.
Well, I really wish you would have said 22 million.
Brad?
All right, any discussion? Darlene? Microphone, please.
So are you going to recommend that the 5 million from the ARPA funds be the money? There is no money left at this point from the allocations that you looked at before. So are you suggesting we take that from something?
No, I think that's more in reference to, because I know that we've sort of put things in general categories for now, but they're not necessarily specifically assigned to where it would be going to.
There was about a $4,800,000 or $900,000 leftover amount that the board voted at the last meeting to move into capital, potentially for projects related to the clerk's office, the jail, et cetera. I think that's what Brad's referring to. You're saying that we want it specifically now to go to the JO project. That's where the money will be, that allocation?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, because it was unallocated to a specific project. It was just in general for those things. So you want specifically it now to be for this.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I mean, the reality is that this isn't all going to occur in the next fiscal year,
Mhm.
and we do have more ARPA funds, obviously, that are allocated for next spring, so.
Yeah, there'll be another $20,000 next year to decide what to do with. Yes. 20 million, I'm sorry. Couple zeros there.
So are you insinuating this is your all-in commitment for this and second draw, or only this draw?
I mean, to be clear, we were not even going to be done with the design by the time we get the next fund. So this is all essentially theoretical of where, whether it's going to come out of the chunk now or come out of it later.
Just to assure my colleagues, we're guaranteeing $5 million of ARPA funds for the jail. We're not dividing it up with clerk's office. We're not dividing it up with other projects. That's the commitment. Does that provide clarification just to make sure we're on the same page? $5 million for the entire jail project, I believe, is what we're looking at right now.
Or is there any other discussion? All right. Guess seeing none, clerk, could you call a roll?
Passalacqua.
No.
Store. Summers.
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes. Motion passes. The next agenda item is date of the next meeting. Guess that was more put on there as kind of a template.
Before you get to that, can I ask one question about the minutes?
Sure.
There was a mention in 7C, Sheriff Herman spoke about the possibility at County Plaza. Uh, He's here. Could he elaborate on that? I haven't heard anything else about that since that comment.
Can, can we really elaborate on that in an open meeting? Yeah, the sheriff or Darlene.
I can just mention that we have several options on the table that are being investigated and that is included. There's, there'd have to be some work done before we would decide whether that was a rational option. I'm hoping that we would have something to bring before the board fairly soon.
All right. And yeah, we were on other business, next date of next meeting. As of now, there's not an anticipated next meeting. We've kind of served the purpose of this committee. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that things could change and something could come up and we might need to schedule one, but as of now, I don't anticipate having another meeting of this committee. Chair's report, there is no chair's report, and seeing no other business on the agenda, I'll call this meeting adjourned.